Hey everybody, I want to show you a few exercises that I like to use with some of my overhead athletes. And the first is, I use this series just to help regain normal motion, especially if we're seeing a shrug sign that's present. This series I found really helps. So the first one I like to use is just flexion and extension, but on the table. So gravity's going to help with this. I like to start with the extension. That way I can teach them how to set that scapula, and then they kind of maintain that scapula while they're going into flexion to 90 degrees. And I usually let them come up in more of a scaption position. But and this whole time I'm giving them good manual cues through the scapula. So I like to do a lot of reps with each of these. But I'm just going to show you a few of each. So just maintaining that scapula in its correct positioning. And so I do a lot of manual cueing while they're going through that. So that's one that I like. Another one I like is in supine, just teaching them a reach to 90 degrees. And again, this whole time I'm going to give them verbal manual cues to engage the scapula properly. Then I also like to do a reach to about 135 degrees, and then a reach back to overhead. Another one I like to use is sideline flexion. Same thing, I like to first cue them through the scapula to reach out to 90 degrees, and then I have them go 135 degrees, and then even up full overhead. And the advantage of doing it sideline is that's naturally going to engage that rotator cuff a little bit for you. So that's one that I really like to use just to reteach that proper scapulohumeral rhythm. Next, I want to show you a good stabilization routine that I like to use, and these are reactive isometrics. So first you're going to start neutral and just make sure they're in a good tall posture. They're just going to step away. And as they step away, the band is going to provide an isometric resistance that they have to react to. I like high reps. I usually go up to 25 reps. We're going to do 4 different directions. Now this is going to be an external rotation. Now I'm going to switch arms just for sakes of the camera, but you'll stay on that same arm. We'll also do an extend or a flexion-based isometric, and even an internal rotation isometric. So the difference between doing it this way and simply just pushing into a wall like we normally do with our patients is when they're pushing into a wall, they're creating that torque. When they're using the band, they're having to create the torque, but they're responding to the level of load that the band is putting on. So it's more reactive. It's going to improve that neuromuscular learning and work on stability. So when they're further down the line and now we're working on overhead stabilization, I do the same exact routine, but overhead. So this is an extension based. So I'm going to have them, whatever their current level of flexion is, that's where we're going to perform the exercise. So if they're only at 135 degrees, they're going to perform it there. If they're able to get further back, that's where they're going to do it. So I have them come up to wherever their highest level of flexion without any kind of compensation is. And then that's where we start. So I put tension under there. Now I step back. And I like about a good 3 to 5 second hold. And again, they're going to do up to 25. Their arm's going to get tired. Then we do a quarter turn. Same thing here. And we're watching to make sure that as they do it, as they fatigue, that they're not getting that shrug. All right, then we'll do a quarter turn. I'm giving them cues the whole time to engage those scapular stabilizers. And then we'll do a quarter turn. I'll just show you with the other arm. So you want to get all 4 directions. You can even have them do a 90-90 ER-IR the same way. Let's say this is their max external rotation. So that's where we're going to put the load at the starting position. And then step back from there. So we can do internal or external rotation. We can also do the same internal rotation. But again, take them to that end point and have them work on stabilization at that point. One that I like to use to bring in the full body is a reverse lunge. So again, I'll have them go to that in range position, wherever it is, engage the scapula, set the minimum tension, and they're just going to do a reverse lunge. So now we're bringing in elements of the core, tying that arm to the opposite hip, just bringing a little bit more dynamic aspect into it. One more exercise I like to use the bands for is just a modification of one that some of you have actually submitted this week. What I like to use this with, so I go with a high row, then I externally rotate, and I maintain that. I do an overhead press. What I add from here is I have them do a step back, and then I take the band and I have them do an eccentric diagonal pattern back to the start position. So we reload, high row, external rotate, press, step back, then eccentric follow through. A great intervention to use, or a tool to use for any of your Tommy John or any of your medial elbow interventions or athletes is a flex bar. So these come in different levels of strength. Yellow is the easiest. This is medium. Green is a little bit more difficult, and blue is more difficult. So you can start these right after elbow surgery, this progression. And the first one you're going to do is a reactive isometric, just like what we did with the shoulder. So your athlete's going to hold that and grip it, and you're going to work all 4 directions. And as you bend the flex bar, it's trying to pull your wrist out of its isometric position. So the more you bend it, the more that forearm is going to fire. Again, I like high rep, up to 25. So once they're able to move beyond that, then they're going to actually do those same movements, but active. So they're going to do their deviations, both directions. They're going to work their pronator, supinator, each direction. From there, a good progression is called the Tyler twist. You can look these up on YouTube. It's really good. So what we're going to do with this, we're going to work the posterior side first. So we're going to load the extensors without any load to it. So we're going to just put them in their shortened position. Now I'm going to take the flex bar. I'm going to put a load on it, but you notice I'm still in that shortened position. Now I'm going to elongate or perform the eccentric portion under tension. Now when I get to the end, I completely relax. So I do the concentric without any kind of a load, put tension on it, but I'm still all the way shortened. But I'm going to do the eccentric elongation under load. So that's going to work the posterior aspect. To work the medial, you're going to do the same thing, but in this position. So I'm going to do shorten the flexors. I'm going to take the bar. I'm going to put a load on it. I'm still shortened. I'm just going to do the eccentric portion. And so the more load, I can just put a little load on that, right? So there's not much twist on that bar. Or I can put a big twist. I could really load this bar up. Now that's more tension to go through. Once they're able to do just the eccentric portion, what I then like to do is concentric, eccentric for the extensors. And then I just flip it, and I'm doing concentric, eccentric for the flexors. And then another one that's really good, similar to the body blade, is just oscillations. So you'll have them perform, I'm going in the sagittal plane right now. It's going to work my deviation motions. You can also do a pronation, supination position. This works your shoulder as well, especially when you go that frontal plane. This is also having to work my shoulder stabilizers, but it's really making these forearm muscles fire. And again, you can use the red or the yellow. Those are good for starting out, but you can each go to the green. And let's say I'm on, the Tyler twist with the red. Well, while I'm working the Tyler twist in the red, I can pull up my green flex bar. And I can have them work the isometric or the active motions with the heavier load. So even though I moved on from one exercise, to a more difficult one, I can go back to these beginning exercises and work with just a heavier load. So Flex Bar, they also make some off-brand names other than the TheraBand Flex Bar. Awesome tool. You can also use this. It's great for soft tissue work that they can perform on their own. It's great for, you know, the flexors when they have that Tommy John scar. When they're able to start doing soft tissue on that, this is something that they can use, and they're not expensive. So your athlete can, you know, you can buy these things on Amazon. So they can have something at home. That way, you know, every single day they're working that flexor mass, getting it ready. That way, when they're getting to their higher levels and starting their throwing programs, that pronator teres, that flexor mass, is as strong as it will be able to be going into that throwing. So these great tool for the Flex Bar. Check these out. I want to show you a good thoracic mobility exercise that I like to use. All you need is a simple broom handle or a stick. So with this, you're going to do it 3 breaths in the in position. And each time you breathe out, you're trying to get a little bit further over. So start on your stomach, grab the stick overhead, and you're going to twist. You pivot through the stick. Now you gotta find the sweet spot between, you don't want this leg to come over. You could simply just roll all the way over. So you want to keep this other leg down as much as you can while trying to get this shoulder flat. And once you're here, breathe in and out 3 times. And each time you breathe out, you're trying to get further in. And I like to do 3 each direction. The next exercise I want to talk about is the wall angel. And a lot of therapists use it, or a lot of clinicians. If you've never seen it, it's a great exercise. But if you have seen it, make sure you're taking one element in particular consideration. Now we see it all the time, the person's doing the wall angel, but the key issue that most people miss is they're not controlling the lumbar spine. So you gotta make sure that the lumbar spine stays neutral. So start them in the down position, have them engage the abdominals, put that lumbar spine in its neutral position, and then perform the wall angel. So when you do that, right, if they're allowed to go just completely relaxed here, the tightness in the lat is gonna pull that spine into flexion, right? But if you hold that in check, now the shoulder's having to work against the tightness of the lat. They're having to work against the tightness of the pec and the pec minor. And those are the 2 issues that they're going to face when they're doing real functional movements, is tightness of other segments. So again, real easy, just have them posteriorly tilt to a neutral position so their low back is in contact with the wall, and then they perform the wall angel from there. You'll find a lot of people can't do that. So what you can do is have them do the exercise just simply on the ground. So have them find lumbar neutral, and they can perform that on the ground. That way they can learn to stabilize the lumbar spine and not to compensate. So try that one out. Last up today, I want to show you a couple end-range stretches you can use for your throwers, and use a stick for each of these. So first, we're just going to work on 90-degree flexion with external rotation. And then we can move them to scaption. So I'm in a scapular plane. Work on external rotation there. Then they can graduate to just 90 degrees of abduction with external rotation. And then you can even elevate and do your external rotation in that position. To work on the internal rotation aspect of the stick, just goes at the low back, and you cross this to the opposite shoulder, and then you use your shoulder as a pivot point. You just lift off from the back. So if you see me from the side, it looks just like this. And you're going to get a lot more stretch out of this than you will. Traditionally we use something to pull the arm up, right? You're gonna get a lot more true internal rotation when you use that to lift off of the lumbar spine. So stick stretches are a really good way to get that, that total motion back.